I beat every single Cold War Easter egg with only pistols, and yes, it was hard, and yes, it was long. Gone are the days when pistols were nothing more than starting weapons. With some luck, my Diamontes, and a fuck ton of self-revives, I was able to beat every single Cold War map. That's enough yapping, let's get this shit started. Die Maschine, one of my favorite maps, simply because the map is simple. The difficulty is not too hard, but not too easy. Anyway, I began the Easter egg by turning on power and opening the portal to the Dark Aether. In the Dark Aether, I collect the parts for the Pack-a-Punch machine and then build the Pack-a-Punch machine. I love on this map that you actually build the Pack-a-Punch machine. After this, I go back into the Dark Aether and collect the 3 parts for the Aether Scope. I honestly have no fucking clue what this scope does, but I guess it's cool. After this, I miraculously go down to a Megaton on round 7, which does make sense because these pistols don't do shit against them. I got back up and fucked up the Megaton. I then used the keycard he dropped to unlock the DIE Shockwave remote. I first used the Die Shockwave to suck these zombies off. I then used the Die Shockwave to blow the zombies.
Pause.
I swear everything on this map is sexual. I then retrieved the Die Shockwave, and then after this went back to the Dark Aether and gave Dr. Rogel and his 2 other twins their books. I then proceeded to suck off some rocks with this Die Shockwave, and then used it to unlock this box. Then this big red Megaton started bitch slapping me around. I then collected the fuse. I swear you could only collect the fuse in the Dark Aether, but I guess this game is breaking after 4 years of no support. I went back to the Dark Aether and used the laser on the fuse. I had now unlocked the thermophobic Die Shockwave variant. It really doesn't matter because every variant is that. I then sucked some Plague Hounds into this machine. As I said earlier, every part of this Easter egg has sucking in it. I used the toxic gas canister from the last step to unlock the Nova 5 variant of the Die Shockwave. After this, I then had a Megaton shoot this tree with its green substance. I don't know what that does. But anyway, I then used that substance to open up this crate with the ice variant of the Die Shockwave, which makes absolutely no sense, but okay. I then used each of the 4 Die Shockwave variants on this machine, which may I say is kind of odd since this gun is always sucking something. Anyway, after this, I then listened to Dimitri and Megaton Overlord seem to have oral sexual intercourse as they were non-stop talking. After this, I then used this wrench on this tank. A zombie pops up the top and I kill him. I then use a Simtech to make the tank fire. I then pick up the golden ball and put it inside, well, whatever the fuck this shit is. I then have to split 2 Megatons in half and feed them inside this machine. I then have to listen to another ghost yap about how much he misses his family. I then pick up this photo and officially enter inside the boss fight. The boss fight arena of which is just the underground section of Die Maschine, and the boss fight itself is just a bunch of zombies and Megatons trying to rape you in Orlov. Soon after starting the boss fight, I go down even though I used my Aether Shroud. The main reason for this is because my pistols do absolutely fucking nothing against the Megatons. I also pretty much just let Orlov die, but since this game is very forgiving, nothing happened. I am luckily able to barely beat the quotations boss fight, but after beating the boss fight, I make my way to the top of the map and find a way to squeeze past all these blue lights and make it to the exfil. And with that, I've beaten the first Cold War map, Die Maschine.
Good work, strike team. We've closed the breach.
Next is what I believe to be the worst Call of Duty Cold War Zombies map, Firebase C. Again, that is my personal opinion. I then begin the strenuous and boring process of turning on all 3 generators on this map. I honestly think the Origins generators are much better. After this, I then go back and forth talking to Ravenov and Peck. Ravenov eventually gives me a keycard that I then have to use to open up a bunch of cabinets around the map. I then have to pick up this gas and put it inside what seems to be a 1970s vacuum cleaner. I then put this machine on top of this air conditioning unit, which causes Dr. Peck to start dancing. I low-key wish she was dancing on a pole, but this still gets me hard anyway.
What?
I then begin what I believe to be the worst COD Zombies Easter egg step ever, which is the Mimic step. This step is absolutely fucking terrible. This step requires us to collect 3 mimics across the map. Each mimic will be disguised as a prop, but the problem is there are so many things that can go wrong. If you kill the mimic, you have to start over again. If you capture the wrong mimic, guess what? You have to wait a few rounds. And if you capture a mimic but then take too long to bring it back to the console, guess what? You have to start over again. I eventually finished this step and was given a floppy disk. But before I used it, I decided to get myself the Ray K by doing a few challenges. And don't worry, I'm not using the Ray K for personal use, it's just needed for the Easter egg. I then used the floppy disk to open up this portal to the Dark Aether. Unfortunately, it was unstable. I then watched Dr. Peck have a mental breakdown. I then opened this locker with this machine that allowed me to start the next step of this Easter egg, or should I say steps. I started the canister step, and the first one was I had to survive this lockdown, which was generally very easy, believe it or not. For the next canister step, I had to search about 10 or 15 canisters for one with absolutely no black particles in it. This generally seems kind of racist, but Call of Duty has always been racist, so I didn't really care. I then had to use the Ray K to prevent this canister from running from me, which wasn't very surprising as most women also run from me. I then had to put each of the 3 canisters inside each of the 3 generators across the map. For the next step of the Easter egg, I had to realign some satellite dishes, but the zombies could still see me. So what my strategy was to go far away from the computer, then come back and align the satellite dishes while the zombie fucked me from the back. After completing that terrible step, a bunch of lasers spawned in and hit the satellite in the middle of the map. Then Samantha Maxis came through the portal, which was actually the entire point of this Easter egg. But next, it was time for the boss fight, and of course we were fighting Order, which is probably the worst boss fight in the entirety of Cold War. But I soon realized that these pistols weren't doing shit against Order, and for some reason I had forgotten to bring in a Ring of Fire, so this boss fight went slowly. But I accidentally forgot to dodge Order's attack and went down somehow. Luckily, this is the only boss fight with a fucking Wonder Phase in the boss fight arena, so I was able to get most of my perks back and was able to beat Order. And like that, I have now beaten the second map of Cold War Zombies, Firebase C. Malware Deterrent, what I believe to be the best Cold War Zombies map made, with tons of creativity and passion put into this map, alongside with the fact that this map is the hardest Cold War map. I began the Easter egg by turning on power. Of course, it fails to turn on, so I have to retrieve 2 different fuses by killing 2 Tempests around the map. I then activate Pack-a-Punch, which causes a bitch-ass disciple to spawn in with a bunch of minions, so I immediately kill him. With Pack-a-Punch now open, I now collect the satellite and then get Brain Rot on my gun so that I can turn a zombie and get into this room and collect the second part for Klaus, which is the hands. While I waited for round 10 to continue this map's main Easter egg, I decided it was time for me to do this map's side Easter egg. The side Easter egg took me to a disco dance floor club thing. There were 3 waves of zombies. They honestly were kind of difficult at times, I won't even lie to you, there was a lot of bosses. After I was done though, I was able to select a door, and behind my door I was given pretty much nothing, it was straight ass. Back on the main map, I was able to kill the off-brand Panzer Soldat and was given the final part for Klaus. I then built Klaus and forced him to open up this locker which had a blacklight in it. I then used the blacklight to find 3 different 2-digit number codes across the map and put them inside this safe, which gave me a free Cerberus Wonder Weapon. Of course I can't use it, but it's necessary for the Easter egg. I also then used Klaus to break down this door. I then finished off that wall with the Cerberus Wonder Weapon or one of its variants. I really do like that the Cerberus has a bunch of different variants that simply drop from zombies. I really began the main steps of the Easter egg when I started throwing soul traps at 3 different boxes across the map. When we threw the soul trap out the boxes, it spawned in a bunch of Tempests. You had to kill all of them. Once they were all dead, you had to take this dark Ethereum canister all the way back to that deep underground unseen base thing. After filling each of the 3 Ethereum canisters and putting them back into the base, I was done and began the next step of the Easter egg, which was upgrading Klaus. This step was extremely difficult. I mean, fucking impossible at times. It has taken me twice actually to beat this thing. It spawned in so many zombies, so many disciples. This shit was hard. I finished upgrading Klaus and decided to put him through more torture by putting him onto the train tracks and forcing him to catch this train. Before I could get on the train though, I was practically pinned down by the zombies. I got on the train and collected 2 parts, a keycard and this fusion reactor thing. I put the fusion reactor thing from the train with the other Ethereum canisters and then called in the HVTs with the keycard. Now, this step is actually extremely difficult in my opinion. You call in a HVT contract and you have to kill a red Megaton, and this Megaton has a lot of health and does a lot of damage. and you also have to fight 2 red mimics, and honestly they hit different. But after that, I then had to pick up the 2 uranium pieces and craft up 2 activated uranium bombs, and then had to crash them together. Don't even ask me what sense this makes. I have no clue how smashing 2 radioactive bombs together creates, well, whatever the fuck this shit is. But anyway, for some reason I had to do this step twice, which was hella annoying. At this time, I then begin the boss fight, and Valentina has to be one of the best bosses in the game. Just look how much goddamn aura she has right now. Look at her sitting in that chair, giving her evil speech, like, damn, man. But guess what? She backs up her aura with skill, cause goddamn, this boss fight was hard, and I mean hard. Like, damn. Less than 5 minutes after this boss fight began, I was dead somehow. Don't ask me how. I made some mistakes and I went down. But since I never make a lie, I decided to come back in round 2 with Pack-a-Punch 3 and more perks and go ham. I mean go crazy on this hell. The boss fight consists of me shooting Valentina's shield until it's down and then doing minor amounts of damage to it with my pistols. The boss fight has tons upon tons of zombies, and Valentina has so many different types of attacks. It's fucking crazy. She has an instant wipe attack. She has an attack that takes away all your shield. She's crazy. But anyway, I was able to whittle her health down all the way and barely able to beat Valentina. After beating Valentina, we witnessed the saddest moment in Cold War, which is the death of Klaus. Now, he's technically not dead, but he's in the Dark Aether somewhere. So I pray that we see him again in Black Ops 6, but he's my favorite Cold War character. And with that, we officially beat my favorite Cold War map, Mawadutoan. And on to Forsaken, the last Cold War Zombies map. What I believe to be the most creative Cold War Zombies map as well. We then get to the main map and have to build the portal, which takes us to this really sick-ass purple laboratory space. I then have to try and open this portal, but it spawns in the Abomination. A really cool idea, which is pretty much just an off-brand version of the Murgwa. But anyway, we go through the portal, which takes us to this control tower. We then turn on power and then press this other red button, which starts a cutscene in which we see what happens on this map. The biggest plot twist in Cold War Zombies is when we realize that the person we were trying to release this entire time was the Forsaken himself. Many people believe that the Dark Aether storyline is hot ass, but this cutscene demonstrates the complexity and the depth to this storyline. I really do hope that in BO6 they flesh out this storyline even more. Anyways, after that I do some challenges and get the Crystal Axe, which is also needed for this map's main Easter egg. After getting the axe, we then do the liquid tank step, which puts us into a lockdown and requires us to fill 4 different tanks across this small area. This step is actually kind of difficult because there are so many mini bosses and so many zombies. Next is the RCXD step, which requires me to drive this little ass RCXD car into this small confined space. Now this step was extremely difficult for me because driving this shit on a keyboard and mouse is mad difficult. Y'all don't understand. Anyway, I was able to blow it up and was given this part. Next, I need to find this massive ass crystal on the map and shoot the 3 orbs flying around it with the crystal axe. Then I have to break the actual crystal and then pick up the crystal ball within it and then throw it in the mouth of an abomination. And then I have to kill the abomination, which gives me pretty much like a refined version of the crystal. For some annoying ass reason, I have to do this step 2 more times with 2 different other crystals. Next, I have to get in this corner and then force an abomination to fuck me in the ass. This causes a part to drop, this massive ass piece that is needed for the final step of the Easter egg. Next, I build the Ethereum Neutralizer, which is pretty much the final step of this Easter egg. I then have to hold and click on it, which then spawns in pretty much like a version of the Tog to Toan Easter egg, where I have to follow this thing and continuously give it crystals so that it keeps on going. It's honestly a kind of hard step at times, because when you go outside the storm thingy, it actually does a lot of damage to you. The Ethereum Neutralizer leads us into the final boss of Cold War against the Forsaken. I enter the boss fight and less than a minute later, I somehow go down. This early in the boss fight is absolutely crazy, but as they say,
never back down, never what?
Never give up!
That's right!
But I was actually about to give up. But I actually ended up realizing that I ended up overestimating this map's difficulty. because I then went on to then charge up one of the cannons and shoot it without taking down the Forsaken shield, which was absolutely fucking stupid. But even with this mistake, I continue on this boss fight and take down his shield and hit him with a laser cannon. But I then go on to hit him a second and a third time, which finally takes down the Forsaken. Forsaken was truly an amazing boss fight and is one of my personal favorite boss fights, as it's very creative and I do love the idea of using cannons against the Forsaken. But with that, I have officially beaten every single Cold War map. I hope everyone has enjoyed, and I hope everyone considers leaving a like and subscribing. This video took me a long ass time to make. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.